things here to see if we can make this work. And for all I know, we're going to be blasted right off the air. But there he is right there, the councilman from the town council. We might need you to move in just a little bit more, Jim. And Jim Atterholdt is with us. And Jim, we appreciate you coming on. We have not had you on since you've been elected to the council, I believe. This is your first time back. So what's it like? How do you like it?
I do enjoy it. It's been an adventure, somewhat of a challenging adventure given the COVID challenges that we face. But I have found it to be very interesting, and I think the people have been very, very helpful and supportive, and we're making progress.
One of the things I asked Dan Allers when he came on was what is the difference between being on the LPA than being on the council? Like some time to yourself and now no time to yourself?
Well, it's not no time to yourself, but it certainly is a much more significant lift than the LPA. Although the LPA it takes some time, but it's more, it comes in waves. The council is relatively constant, and the constituent communication is demonstrably higher, and that's okay. But people have been great, a lot of good input, and I'm learning a lot. It's been a great experience.
First question before we get into the meat of the nuisance abatement board.
Nothing going on this week. It's pretty quiet week.
Crazy great week for the town here. What was the first thing you thought when you heard about the murder?
It was shocking, and it was a tragedy, and after a couple days, to me, it's it began to build the pressure, I think, for change on this island in a way that I had not seen yet, and that coupled with the litigation that had recently occurred, you could just feel the pressure on the island rising, and people were beginning to stir, and you could sense that. It was palpable.
Why did it take a murder for things to get to the point that they had gotten after 3,000 calls to the Lonnie Kai over the last 3 years?
I don't know. I mean, maybe some time after the shooting, I realized that, in order for this thing to really begin to turn around, we had to begin to apply pressure, and the media piece of the pressure was really critical. And so we had to figure out a way to get the print media interested. And then we also, because once the print media is interested, then the TV folks come on board. And I'll tell that story in a little bit as to how all that happened. And then you couple that with what the mayor's negotiations were. The mayor did a great job. I just think it was the perfect storm to bring it all together to I think, a very positive conclusion.
So do you think, that people just were unaware of the amount of calls that had been there? And then, like you said, it takes something that unfortunately grabs people's attention to really take a look at what was going on there and how significant the issues were.
Yeah, and I think it grabbed everybody's attention, including the folks that are running Lonnie Kai. And I think, to their credit, they're making some substantial internal changes. They made some significant concessions this week, and I'm very thankful for them for doing that, because, I mean, this is going to sound a little hokey, but I really believe it. I believe it's morning again in Fort Myers Beach. I mean, as I talked about at the hearing on Monday, we were really at a precipice. We were at a fork in the road, and as I said, this is a time for choosing. And I laid out two paths, and fortunately, again, thanks to the Conadares family for helping us along in this, is the path that we have chosen is as follows. We have a brand new Estero Boulevard with new sidewalks, bike paths, and stormwater system. We're going to have a refurbished Times Square soon, a refurbished Bayside Park. We're going to have a Margaritaville resort, which is going to have a tremendously positive impact on this part of the island. We're going to have a new bridge on the south end. We're going to have basically a brand new recreational and community center in Bay Oaks. It's a renaissance for this island, and it's a beautiful vision, and I'm really encouraged, and I hope the people of this island are encouraged as well, and I think it's time for us all to move forward together.
So when you saw the folks come to the council meeting on Monday, one after another, public comment, and very passionate about what was going on and the crime, and the sheriff's department sometimes not helping out. Even there was one person that said that they didn't even answer her calls. What were your thoughts when you saw all that?
Well, let's get to Monday, because there was quite a bit of activity that led us to Monday, and you guys were very helpful in getting people to turn out Monday, which was, the people that turned out Monday were awesome. Kim, you were there. Yep. Thank you for coming. It was awesome. The courage, the conviction of the people that were there. I was so proud of this island. But leading up to Monday, I had asked our town manager to get the stats from the fire department as to what the runs were for the top 10 addresses. And the fire chief was great getting that information, and town manager disseminated it to the town council. the numbers were stunning. You guys have talked about the sheriff runs, the fire department runs are just stunningly disproportionate. So I thought, we got to get the media involved. So I had read an article after the shooting from Mike Braun at the News Press, who I think works well with Dave Dorsey, you were just talking to. And I sent this to Mike, and the next day I got an email from one of our constituents, John Thomas, who I don't think she'll mind if I mention her name, but she had aggregated the sheriff's department data in a way that was really powerful as well. Numbers were stunning. So I sent that to Mike Braun as well. And he said, well, can we all get together? And he goes, could you find some business owner who has concerns? And we were just happened to meet for lunch at the Whale, and Mike, Marty Harity got together with us. And Marty, of course, shared his concerns because it's really impacting his business adversely. And we spent an hour helping Mike Braun get up to speed and giving him all this information. And at the end of that hour, he says to us, he goes, well, this is really interesting, but what's the action item? I need an action item for the news story. And then I was really reticent to say this because I'd heard that Dan Allers was in negotiations with the sheriff's department on this nuisance abatement ordinance. But I felt like if we didn't share that, then we're going to lose the story. And so I said, you really need to reach out to Counselor Allers. He's working on a nuisance abatement ordinance that will give the town the power to fine and potentially shut down entities that are problematic for the island. His eyes just lit up. And he says, I will be there at that council meeting on Monday, and I'll be there early. And so all of a sudden, he shows up Monday. Great turnout at the town. Again, thanks in part to your show. Great turnout. People's testimony, extremely powerful. So Tuesday morning, we get a great article from the News Press. Dave Dorsey does a piece on the litigation. Mike Braun does a piece on the nuisance abatement board. Front page, top of the fold. Pressure's on. Pressure. So what happens next? Tuesday night, Wing TV, Fox local channel, does great stories on this issue. Again, people are brave enough to go on record for these TV reporters. Pressure. Wednesday morning, surprise of all surprises, the Observer comes out. 3 stories on the front page of the Observer. They did a great job of covering this issue. Pressure. Again, mayor's working his magic. They come to an agreement to move forward. And again, the island's in a much better place. So I'm thankful to Condare's family. I'm thankful for everybody who had the courage to be involved in this process. Because initially there was a mindset that, the town can't do anything. We don't control the sheriff's department. We don't control the state entities that regulate the liquor licenses. There's nothing we can do. When you say that, it takes the pressure off. You got to have the pressure on. So in the midst of all this, again, Counselor Allers is working with the sheriff's department. They opened the sheriff's outreach center. Jackie Litzek from the chamber is heavily involved in all this. Businesses are donating their time and money to build this little outreach center, higher presence for the sheriff. Who donates the building for the outreach center? The guy who owns Margaritaville. I mean, does anybody see the irony in all that? But the key thing was that helped build the pressure. So when Monday's hearing occurred, and all the media coverage that resulted, all the bravery of the people of this island who spoke out, I just think they reached a precipice where things had to change. And they did in a positive way. And I'm not here to rehash all that. I just wanted to give you the backstory of how that helped come to be.
Well, thank you for joining us, everybody, today. Have a great weekend. And just kidding. You laid it out perfectly. I don't know. Well, let's talk about the nuisance abatement board, to be specific about that for a little bit, because Vice Mayor Hassa Frost said something at the meeting that really, I latched on to, and I posted her comment about it, her quote about it. And a lot of people, not a lot, I don't know what the number is. I mean, we have 9 listeners, but a few people posted that another government layer. Isn't there enough government? And, how is this thing going to work? And, how 10 years from now, maybe, Pete's Time Out does something the next council doesn't like. And so why a nuisance abatement board? Why isn't there enough teeth in what we have now, like a sheriff's department, a code enforcement? If all these things are going on, it seems like we're creating something that what?
Well, let me because I think to add to that was the statement that was made by one of the sheriff's deputies there, who was like, I need something to go forward on. So I guess the question is, do you need different ordinances with teeth, or this nuisance abatement board? Or
before Jim answers that, for the people that don't know, the somebody from the sheriff's department was at the council meeting on Monday, and this came up, and I thought Rexanne was going to come across the table and say to him or strangle him, because he basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, that we have to have the calls in order to answer the calls, or there has to be a crime in order for us to go. And I was yelling at the screen, 3,000 calls aren't enough. I mean, how many more do you need before somebody like the sheriff goes over there and, well, wait, there's a political sign under the Lani Kai sign. There's not something being done. I mean, so that's what I'm getting at. I mean, there's laws on the books now. Why isn't that enough, Jim?
Well, it's a fair question. I love Rexanne, a lot of respect for her, but I thought the quote in your Facebook page was a little bit. I don't think there was enough context, and let me provide some context. First of all, we don't have our own police department in Fort Myers Beach. These issues have been going on for years. Nothing's happened. So you can either go through the mindset, there's nothing we can do. We don't have our own police department, nothing we can do. Well, there is something we can do, and it's this nuisance abatement board. For my conservative friends, and I'll put my conservative credentials up against anybody's, I think that's a legitimate question. What another bureaucracy, more of this and that. Well, first of all, the state instituted this law that allowed municipalities to adopt one of these boards years ago when they were trying to shut down crack houses. It's extremely limited in scope. So in order for this to have any impact on your world, you have to either be dealing drugs, involved in prostitution, involved in gang activity, or illegal gambling. That's it. So they're not coming after you for not sweeping your sidewalks. They're not coming after you for not trimming your hedges, for not having your blinds pulled and your lights exposed. None of that. Those are the 4 items. Now, there's 2 additional ones in the proposed ordinance, but I think we're going to take those out because those aren't referenced in state statute. So that being said, very limited in scope. So my hope is we never have to use this thing. But it's a tool in the toolbox, as the sheriff's office said, that's useful for those entities that are habitual offenders who aren't responsive. Again, we don't have our own police department. The mayor can't say to the police department, go over there and clean things up. We don't have any authority to do it. This gives us a tool. Again, and you say, well, future councils, they come in and do crazy things. Well, future councils could adopt a nuisance abatement board, and they can appoint whoever they want on it. You can't bind future councils. So, again, this is just a tool in the toolbox that could really be helpful. And quite honestly, it was really critical in applying the appropriate pressure to get where we are today. So I think it could be really helpful. We have to be careful, though, that we're really, really conscious of not overstepping our bounds. But again, when you don't have your own police force, the town needs some kind of a tool to enhance its public safety. And I think this could be helpful.
Now, you mentioned that two things were brought up that are not in state statute. And one of them, I believe, was an alcohol related.
Right.
And that, not having that in can you explain to people what that was that would have to come out? Because I think some people were like, well, that would really be helpful.
It is, but one of them, it's if you're doing illegal alcohol sales to minors, etc. That could under in the Lee County ordinance, that could be under the jurisdiction of the nuisance abatement board. The problem is that was not in the state statute that authorized the nuisance abatement board. So one could argue you could litigate that in court and not be successful. That's the state's job, is to come in with their excise police and do the policing of the liquor license, underage sales, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's a challenge. If you keep it in, it sounds like it could be helpful, but again, if it's litigated and you lose, so our lawyers are looking in to see whether that makes sense or not, whether that would pass muster. And Rexanne raised a legitimate concern about that. And so we're looking at it, but I still think, there's no shortage of drug dealing and prostitution and gang activity. So there'll be plenty for the nuisance abatement board to look at, but it'll be very limited in scope. But again, some of these nuisance abatement boards have been inactive for years now, but they served a purpose at one time. I talked to the head of the nuisance abatement board at Fort Myers, and they shut places down. They instituted fines. Now they haven't done anything in the last year and a half, but it's always there. That tool is always in the toolbox. And don't think that for really bad actors, don't think that doesn't put the fear of God in them, to know that that's out there and it's available to the town and cities.
So the crimes that you mentioned were serious crimes. Drug dealing and prostitution and whatever
gang activity.
So my assumption is that the only reason you're putting that together is because something is going on. You wouldn't be putting it together if that activity wasn't going on the beach.
Yeah, it has gone on, is going on, and potentially could go on.
But that, to me, that's a serious crime. Then why isn't the sheriff's department dealing with it in the way that could be something that leads to them changing? Well, they are kind of changing now, so I don't want to discredit that. They seem to be making changes, and you mentioned that they have some kind of company coming in to try and help them make changes too. So maybe that's going in the right direction. But I know you want to keep the pressure on. But I guess my question is, those are serious crimes, and we're talking about 3 years of activity of those crimes. Why isn't the sheriff's department doing something?
Well, I think you saw that tension in the colloquy between Councilor Hassefrost and the sheriff's department. The sheriff was office representative was basically saying, hey, we react to these crimes and we respond to them. And she was like, oh, wait a minute. What about being proactive? What about going undercover? What about doing all these things? Because she's got a history in the courts as well. So that's a healthy tension, and that's a conversation that should be had. But, the sheriff's office did step up. They helped us with the nuisance abatement board. They've helped us with this outreach center. So, could they do more? I really think they could do more. So, but it's some give and take, and we need to have these conversations. But the town doesn't have any control over this. For 3 years, nothing's happened. Nuisance abatement board gets referenced, things start happening. So credit goes to the Councilor Allers for bringing this thing up. Credit goes to the people who showed up and the media that helped really give this thing a voice. And credit goes to the Conadaris family and quite frankly to Jackie Litzek at the chamber and so many others. And the mayor obviously was critical in this. So we've had it was this perfect storm, and everybody came together to talk about this new vision that I just referenced earlier in the show, which is a vision of optimism, a vision of a new renaissance for this island. And so again, I'm willing to put things behind us. Obviously, things have to change. The Lonnie Kai's acknowledged that they have to change. They've put significant steps in place. They're going to do more. We won't have to trust them on that, although I take them at their word that they're going to make a good faith effort. But as Reagan said a long time ago, he used to always quote this old Russian saying, "Dovi no provi," which means trust but verify. So we don't have to trust anybody. We have the numbers from the fire department. We have the numbers from the sheriff's office. We'll be able to know 6 months from now or 3 months from now whether if these reforms have actually resulted in significant changes. And if they have, God bless them. Let's move forward and let's not look back. But if they haven't, we've got tools in our toolbox now to hold folks accountable.
What about tools in terms of fines? Because I know that Rexanne was talking about, when you guys were talking about something to do with it, and a $5,000 fine, and she was like, well, that's really not enough.
Yeah, I mean, the fine issue, you can, and I didn't disagree with her. The fine, it wasn't substantial, but don't forget that the nuisance abatement board also has in its hip pocket the ability to shut down a premise. You don't think that scares folks? You don't think that sends a message? That's real. I mean, that's bigger than any fine issue. But, we can look at the fine issue. I thought it was interesting that she was talking about raising the fines, but then didn't like the nuisance abatement board. So I'm not really sure where.
Well, could one be done and not the other?
She's asking good questions.
Yeah. Could something be implemented because when you look at the cost, and I don't remember who it was at the meeting brought up the cost for that number of
the cost is minimal because the 7-member nuisance abatement board is not paid. They're volunteers from our community.
The cost of to
litigate it.
No. The cost of the fire department going on this excessive number of.
That's a great question, but that's a different issue. And quite frankly, the fire board, fire commission, they have jurisdiction over the fire department. Town council does not. The town or the fire commission, and I've talked to a number of the members, and they've been very responsive. They can look at some metrics to begin to charge entities that are disproportionately using their resources. Okay. I mean, the fire department's for everybody. Everybody pays their property taxes. But if you look at some of the fire runs and the disproportionate number of them, I think somebody should be charged for especially when you go way beyond what your norm is. And quite honestly, that means the taxpayers are subsidizing this entity. Right, so that's got to stop. But that's a key issue. And the sheriff's office could implement something like that as well.
So last question on that, because there are other topics. Do you have the support to get this approved?
Well, I think we do, and we're vetting this thing. I mean, there was a great exchange on Thursday. Everybody asked a lot of really good questions. Our lawyer's still researching it. I think we've got the votes, and again, it's just a tool in the toolbox. I think we're moving on, but we need something just to make sure that the promises are kept. We don't want to sit here and just bash everybody again. We're done with all that. It's time to move forward as an island. But this tool in the toolbox will help ensure that going forward, we've got the ability to hold folks accountable for the promises that they've made. And I think that's healthy. And I think, again, we'll make some modest changes to make sure, we keep this entity in check so it doesn't go rogue, so it doesn't have, powers that are irresponsible, because I'm very sensitive to that. But I just think, given what it's already helped us accomplish, I think it could be a nice a tool. And again, I hate to use this reference, but the tool in the toolbox. I think it could be really helpful. And I think we do have the votes.
And just to let everyone know, we're all willing to move on and move forward. We'd love for Ken Conadieris to come on the show so that we could all bury the hatchet together and have him explain the things that are going on down there and the changes that they're making to become, a great neighbor on the island. I'm not saying they weren't not a good neighbor back in the years past. We know Mr. Conadieris has done great things for the island, and he's been here a long time, and we'd love for them to come on, or for you, Kim, my wife, to go over there and ask the questions yourself, because I could be a prick sometimes.
Yeah. Well, you can be, but I mean, I think that the Lani Kai has been part of this island forever. They offer, affordable and resort style for folks, and that if they can just make it safer and improve, that's a place where people go and get their picture taken. I mean, it's iconic, Florida-esque, and it's part of this community. And as it moves forward, it's all going to fit great together.
Yeah, and their spokesperson in the article, I think it was Dorsey's article on Thursday in the news press, basically said, I think it was Melissa Schneider said, we welcome them as a neighbor, the Margaritaville as a neighbor to our island, a new neighbor to our island. And she said she also spoke for Bob Conadieris, and I thought that was a very gracious statement. And they're clearly looking to move forward, and I think everybody else is as well.
So next issue is I'm very confused about Bay Oaks and Times Square and Bayside Park and where that money's coming from.
Well, you should have been there then, because you explained it eloquently.
There seems to be a $10 million loan that the town council will ask
line of
for.
Credit.
But
line of credit, very good.
Okay, but that is not going to be enough, even for Bay Oaks right now. What they seem like is going on over there. So how is all that going to work?
You take it.
The vision of the previous council was to set up appropriate funding streams for the renovation of Bay Oaks, which is roughly it's a $10 million total. And again, these numbers will vary given how we decide to prioritize each project. But Bay Oaks is about $5.5 million. Bayside's 1.2 million, and Times Square's I think is 3.4, and so it roughly totals 10 million. And so I think there was a little confusion when the previous council passed the mill rate increase last year that was going to somehow fund these projects. Really, what it does is help fund the payment for the $10 million loan, because that raises about $250 million. $250,000 annually. That mill rate increase from last year. And the service on the loan is something like
$558.
Boy, Kim, you are so good. $558,000 annually, and so we have a shortfall. So how do we fill that shortfall? Well, the council, I think very wisely so, decided to no longer subsidize for general fund dollars the stormwater system for the town. So those rates will be adjusted to impact those who are utilizing the stormwater system. But it frees up significant funds for the general fund, which will make up that difference.
Right.
So we will have a funding stream for that $10 million loan. Now, I think your question, Ed, is, the Bay Oaks project, as they've gotten into this, they proposed some wonderful options, but it may go above the 5.5 million. And so at that point, there isn't a funding stream available beyond that, unless we reprioritize from other projects. Or we find a new funding stream, or we kind of try to make some choices within the Bay Oaks project. We got to, there's a lot of, different buildings. There's a lot of different turfs. There's a lot of different choices. So, I mean, it's all about, when you're doing budgeting, it's all about choices. So the Bay Oaks folks, again, it's a wonderful project and I support it, but they are going to have to prioritize a little bit in terms of what their priorities are.
And Roger, made a good point, a couple of good points. He said when the Bay Oaks, when it first started, it was just to do
that
welcome center and the entrance. And then, and he agreed that the whole thing needed to be done. But the impetus, the original, was just that. And that it's going to be a phased, or, that it was intended to be a phased kind of project. And I know when I was listening to the BORCAB meeting recently, and the Little League guy was there, Rick Lowry, he was saying, once they get it going, that they could raise money, that there's other possible donations that could come in, other agencies raising money, so that to make that, to fit that shortfall.
And there's additional revenue that'll come into the town. People don't talk about this very much, but if Margaritaville gets built, the property tax revenue for the town will be in the hundreds of thousands. For the county, it'll be in the millions. And that means theoretically that could already have been built. So that revenue stream would be coming into the town. which could help supplement the Bay Oaks project. But I do think it's important for the Bay Oaks vision to make some choices, prioritize a little bit. And if we need to do some things down the road, I'm certainly open to that.
So when is Times Square going to start?
Theoretically next year, as I understand. They're going to try to time it with some water and stormwater work that has to be done through here. They're talking about redesigning the whole footprint for the coming over the bridge, traffic patterns. You've got Margaritaville going on. So somebody smarter than me is going to have to figure out how to do this in concert with each other, with all these projects. So we could be as least disruptive to our businesses here, to our tourist community, and to our residents, because it's going to be a challenge to try to coordinate all these various projects. But let me just say, it's just as the Estero Boulevard project was a nightmare for the north. Well, now that it's done, it's beautiful, and we're going to have to kind of suffer a little bit, but it's going to be worth it.
Is there anyone smarter than you?
Oh, there's a lot of people smarter than me. There's my wife right over there. She's a lot smarter than me.
I will agree with that.
Yeah.
So before we let you go, I know Byron's here, and we could go on for a whole hour.
Oh, I know.
I do want to ask you if you'll tell us how you will vote on the Dune walkover.
I will not tell you how I will vote on the Dune
Good
walkover
for you.
because it's currently it's not in litigation yet, but there is a Bert Harris claim that's been filed, and we have 150 days to negotiate. And I have some concerns about the Dune walkover. I live in that critical wildlife area. As I was telling Kim before the show, the condo that we live in, I saw a picture the other day before it was built. In 1991, there was a giant lagoon in front of our building, very similar to what they're facing up in front of Eddie's place. And you know what? I talked to people that lived there from the beginning. They said, we didn't like that. We had to wade through it. It was a disaster. We had to go around it. We really couldn't even wade through it. Some people loved it because it was a beautiful bird sanctuary. And 15 years later, it's gone. We have direct beach access, so that the island shoreline is evolving. And and it's a beautiful area, and it's so different because it's quiet, and there is a nature preserve aspect to it, of course. So, I'm struggling with this thing, and you're the fence sitter. It seems on the council. I don't know about fence sitting. I'm
sorry, I didn't mean it that way. I mean, you're the deciding vote.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know about that either, but I do know that I think this is an issue we need to really look long and hard at. I don't begrudge the folks that are asking for this. I understand it. It makes their life a lot easier, but I'm really protective of that critical wildlife area, even in the areas that adjoin it. So I'm struggling.
We're going to have Eddie on next week. He's flying in from Texas to be on the show. And so it sounds like this is going to a Bert Harris lawsuit.
I don't know yet. There's 150 days to have conversations, to have discussions, and I think anything's possible. I'm certainly an open-minded person, but right now, I'm
waiting to see the evidence.
I'm a little concerned about the situation, and I'm a little concerned about the Dune walkover. But I'll keep an open mind.
So things are different now compared to when you were on the LPA and voted.
When I was on the LPA, none of the opposition came before us.
Gotcha.
All we heard was one side, and since then I've had a chance to hear the other side and understand the issue a little deeper. And again, I have respect for the people that are the applicants here. I have no animosity, but as I hear the other side of this issue, I've educated myself in a way that's made me certainly much more sympathetic.
Great. Well, Jim, thanks so much for coming on. You're always a great guest.
Thank
and
you. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for
getting
folks out on Monday. The people that came Monday to that hearing were spectacular. I was so proud of our island. Really courageous, bold statements. People went on the record, showed some real guts, some real heart, and I'm just so proud of our island.
There were a lot of passionate statements.
And I'm excited for the renaissance of this island, because this island is going no place but up. And it's for those who are here and those that are coming here, I hope they're encouraged, because these next 2 years are going to be really exciting for Fort Myers Beach.
Thanks so much, Jim. See you again soon.
Right,
thanks a lot. So Jim Atterholdt, everybody, town council member of the Fort Myers Beach Town Council. So before we introduce our next guest, I want to let you know about islandoils.com. They repel the bugs. You know what your job is now, right? To do the transition here while I read the ads. I don't know how many times we have to go through this. At least you didn't interrupt me like last night. It soothes the itch. If it's already bitten, 100% oil, 100% works. No water added. Oil and water don't mix, everybody. It's made in Florida by Florida Floridians, and it smells fabulous. 100% oil, but absorbs well and is also a nice moisturizer. You can order it online at islandoilsllc.com. We love those guys for sponsoring us. The stuff is great. We use it all the time in the backyard. And we're going to be at the Hyatt Coconut Point for Kimmy's little birthday later on today. So we're probably going to be spraying that on ourselves down there. Our next guest is running for the 19th Congressional District for the U.S. Congress. Byron Donalds, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, everybody. It's good being here.
Now, you are involved in one of the busiest races, or I don't know if busy is the right word, but it's crazy.
Crowded.
Yeah,
it's a crowded
races.
race.
How are things going?
Actually, things are going great. It's a crowded race. Unfortunately, for everybody listening, I want to apologize to you. It's been a nasty race. This is what happens, unfortunately, when people want to win at all costs. But, my campaign, we're going great. We think we're very close to winning. And so we're just going to continue to work hard, knock on doors, could be in every part of the district like we're here this morning in Fort Myers Beach, and just work hard to hopefully represent Southwest Florida in Congress.
So give our folks on the beach an idea of your background in politics. You're in Tallahassee now, and you've been there. So explain all that.
Full background. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. My career is actually in banking and insurance.